Good evening, everybody. Happy Monday. We've got a special guest today, one of my heroes, somebody that has absolutely changed not just my life, but thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of people's lives, Tom Bilyeu. Some of the stories you guys are going to hear today, some of the inside tracks, some of the things that he dealt with in his business as he was scaling. You guys are going to hear some of those cool stories. I'm just so excited about this particular guest. Tom actually originally wanted to be a filmmaker before he sold multiple businesses, and actually one of the companies that they sold that ended up selling for $1 billion. He's known as a $1 billion CEO. Should be a lot of fun having this conversation with him. You know, when you look at Impact Theory, his podcast, and you look at the quality of guests, and more importantly, the quality of the questions that Tom asks and the conversations that he really pulls out of people, it's unparalleled, honestly. Like, he's one of the very, very best on the planet. We are so lucky to have him today. You know, it's interesting watching Tom for so many years, especially on Impact Theory, and how good he is at mindset. I don't really think there's anybody better than him at understanding what questions to ask each individual guest, how to really get the conversation going to such a level that's practical, meaningful, and the audience can actually walk away saying, wow, I actually learned something and I can actually apply this. Tom is phenomenal. When you hear his story and you hear what he's accomplished, you'd think, why is this guy still working? Why is somebody, and I asked this myself before I started getting in rooms with other billionaires and other people that are multi-millionaires that have exited businesses. And when you're just starting out in business, you ask yourself the question, why would somebody who has $1 billion or who has sold a company for $1 billion continue to work? Because I think when we all were growing up as kids in our families' houses, everything was about retiring. I'm going to save up money and I'm going to stop working. It's foreign when you start hanging out with people like Tom. It is jarring, to be honest. And it's scary to have conversations with people that are like, yeah, so what? I have $100 million. So what? I have $300 million. That was never actually the goal. Contribution, fulfillment, those are actually the goal. In fact, one of my favorite stories about Tom was that Tom walked away, or he was attempting to walk away from one of the first companies that he was involved in. He was walking away, and literally the two partners he had, he owned basically 10% of the company. He had earned this through sweat equity, been putting his heart and soul into this company for a couple of years, but it's not where his passion lied. So he walked in and basically handed over his $2 million of equity in this company. It was on paper, it was worth $2 million. And he told his two partners, hey, I'm not finding what I wanted here. I know that I'm worth millions of dollars already in this company, but this is not what I signed up for. This is not who I wanted to be. And I feel like I'm kind of wearing a mask of who I actually am trying to attempt to be and what kind of life and authentic life I'm trying to live. And in that attempt of giving that $2 million worth of equity back over to these partners sat down with him for dinner and said, what the hell, man? Like, we are on to something great. Why the hell would you leave? And he was passionate about becoming a filmmaker. What's amazing is one of my favorite quotes from Tom is, there is no success big enough, large enough for you to stand in for forever. I'm so excited and so grateful that Tom took an hour and a half to hang out with us tonight. Let's bring up Tom Bilyeu and let's get into scaling your business into 2025. Tom, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. How about you?
Dude, honestly, I'm such a big fan of yours. I know so many people are. Seriously, my favorite quote of yours, you've said it multiple times on other podcasts. I've written it down. It's one of those things that I remind myself every time I get a big check or a big deal in real estate, is that there is no success big enough to stand in for forever. And a guy who's sold $1 billion company, I'd say 15 years ago, I would be blown away. Like, what the hell is going on? Why would somebody that sold a business for $1 billion keep
Yeah, there's really two reasons. So one is what you already talked about, which is the biological imperative to grow, to do more. Tony Robbins sums it up really well when he said that progress is a foundational pillar of human happiness. And so if that's true, and I believe that it is, then no matter how much you accomplish, you're still going to want to progress. And so I came to grips with the reality that no matter how high the mountain was that I climbed, I would get to the top and say, what's the next peak? And so that just made it clear to me that it's the climb that matters. It's not the destination. So, and you've heard that a million times, but once you put it in evolutionary perspective, it becomes very clear. So I just knew that meaning and purpose were the internal psychological state that I wanted to maintain. And that meant that I was going to have to forever focus on the climb. And then the other is that I am a business athlete who Thankfully, I play a sport that you never have to physically age out of. And I love the sport and I want to be in it and playing and pushing myself to my absolute limits. I'm not a sit around at home guy. I am, once you realize that Steve Jobs was right when he said that the world was built by people no smarter than you, then all of a sudden you want to see just how much you can do with this one life. So I play to win every day.
I love it. Born not as an entrepreneur, though. One of the things I took away from you a couple of years ago, I think it was an interview that you did maybe 3 years ago, and it popped up on my radar. I went and listened to it, and you said, I'm not a born entrepreneur. I had to learn that skill. And Tom, I was born an entrepreneur. I am allergic to a desk job. I'm allergic to those things. I was born that way. And so what's interesting is having conversations with people in hallways at events that I speak at or wherever I'm at, people will ask me from time to time, Pace, do you think an entrepreneur is born an entrepreneur or can they be built? And you, I believe, my friend, are proof of that. So you say multiple times you were not a born entrepreneur. How did that change for you?
Goals make demands. And so to do the things that I wanted to do in life, I had to learn to generate and control the financial resources. And to achieve what I want to achieve, which is what I'm building now, which is an entertainment company, I had to learn to be in the driver's seat. I had to learn to create something from nothing, to generate momentum, which is a big part of being an entrepreneur. And so while it doesn't come naturally to me, and I had to learn a lot about deal structure, and I see a lot of people that just sort of have an intuitive understanding of arbitrage. So you get your Gary V's of the world. I'm sure you have similar stories where it's like he's 9 and he's at a baseball card trading fair, and he just has a sense of like, you know, what's going to be hot today, what's going to be hot in a week, and what you should sell now, what you should hold on to. I don't have any of those instincts. And so I had to train everything and learn it from the ground up. But because it's built on the physics of the human experience, anything that rides on the back of something knowable is learnable. And so all of this stuff is learnable. Now, look, I don't want to downplay the reality. You have to have a certain intellectual horsepower. But if you are here and you hear my voice, you meet what I call minimum requirements. So unfortunately, we are not blank slates. It's not that anybody can do anything, but it is that if you meet minimum requirements, just believe you can get 100 times better at anything. And so skill set is sliced into, I don't know, probably 10,000 different slices. But once you understand, I can pick some number of these slices and I can become truly 100 times better than I am today. And what would your life look like if you were 100 times better at making money? And really, like, think about that. What's your salary? You know, let's say you're making 150 grand a year. Okay, now imagine making 100 times that amount. All of a sudden it's like, okay, I see. So even though you might not be the greatest of all time, even though you may never be the next Elon Musk, you can do things that would baffle the mind of anybody that grew up with you.
Man, you know, I could go on and on about multiple parts of your history. And I think a lot of people have heard some of these questions, but the thing that I fell in love with your mind over was that you said multiple times, you are a skill acquisition guy. All you do is you acquire skills. And a guy who has achieved at least what I thought was not even possible already in my life. And now I have completely different dreams and hopes and all that kind of stuff. You've done this 25 times. I wonder, a guy at your level, what are skills that you are trying to acquire that you wouldn't even fathom would even be possible maybe 15, 20 years ago? What are skills that Tom today is trying to hone in? Is it storytelling? Is it leadership? What is it you're focused on?
Yeah, so there's a real rubber meets the road reality. If you're building a business, you have to get good at human capital allocation and capital allocation. So at the highest level, those are the two things that I'm really thinking about. Now, obviously nested under that is a lot of stuff, but you really do have to be able to think from first principles. So for instance, I'm building a video game, and a big thing I'm thinking through now is, okay, I don't like the rate of progress that we're making. We're making progress, and anybody else is going to look at that and be very excited. I look at it and just say, okay, why can't I make my 10-year dream come true in 6 months? And so that fundamentally shifts the way that you think about this. And so as I think through being able to attract capital, human capital specifically, to what I'm trying to do, and then understanding how to point them at the problem that I'm trying to solve, and whether that ends up being open sourcing the game to getting a bunch of other people to work on it, whether that becomes setting the game up as a platform, that ability to not be trapped by the way things have been done historically, but instead to be thinking up from first principles, that really is the skill. Everything else is nested inside of that. And so there's a gift that I've been trying to give to the world since I stepped in front of the camera, which is to get them to understand that they are having a a biological experience. That the most important thing you can understand as an entrepreneur, as a father, as a significant other is you're having a biological experience. Now, why do I say that? Because your brain traps you in these really weird ways, and thinking from first principles, the scientific method, all of that stuff is the wisest people throughout history screaming from whatever time period they existed in that to think from first principles, to use the scientific method is to escape the emotional traps of the human mind. And so if you really want to be a great entrepreneur, in fact, you could probably just line up the greatest entrepreneurs of all time based on two things: an ability to lead, right? That's a lot, but an ability to lead and an ability to think from first principles. People that can do that, they've got a shot at truly terraforming culture, terraforming the physical world that we live in. It becomes there's very little upper bound to the person that can do those two things.
Okay, so when you're talking about scaling businesses and you look at the statistics, right? Most people are staying well under $1 million a year in revenue as a business owner, right? I think it's like 91 to 93%. You probably know that stat better than I do, but it's really, really high. It's in the 90s. What would you say are a handful of reasons why? Like, very obvious, you're standing there and somebody says, hey, I do $200,000 a year in revenue, I'm stuck. Are there just basic things that you're like, every single business between $1 to $1 million a year in revenue that are stuck are dealing with 1, 2, or 3 of these issues?
Yes, indeed. So the first one is going to be product market fit. So PMF, that is where everybody falls down. So the world just doesn't want your product. Now, there is a very troubling thing that happens. This is one of the more complicated things about business. So let me actually give you the second one first. So the first is product market fit. The second is mindset. So you're just not thinking about yourself or the world in the right way. You have a false conception of what really is. All right. Now, where this all gets complicated is if you want to scale a business, you have to understand that your job is to connect dots with a narrative, and then you're going to use that narrative to intoxicate your team with the certainty that this is the path forward and that they can fall in behind you because you have a crystal clear vision of where you're going. Now, the hard reality is you're wrong in some way. Now, nonetheless, you have to connect those dots and get the audience to believe that you have the answer for how we're going to move forward, because that is the only way to get people behind you, is if they believe your vision is stronger than theirs, that you really have the answers, that you show them how to make sense of these what feel like disparate, points of information. Now, when you do that though, you blind yourself to whatever is actually true. And the way you've connected the dots is merely your best guess approximation for what is true. The reason the physics of progress or the scientific method exists is you don't actually have a vision for how the world really works. You have only an approximation, and it goes wrong at some point. And your job is to, as quickly as possible, to figure out where it's going wrong so that you can adjust and get closer to the truth. But the dance that you have to do of saying, I know this is the way, go, 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 and then step back and go, what I really know is that some part of that is wrong. And now I have to figure out which piece, adjust, and move forward. So an inability to intoxicate people with certainty is certain death. An inability to recognize the parts of that certainty that you have used to intoxicate others is likely to intoxicate you and blind you to the fact that it's not actually accurate. And entrepreneurs struggle with that dance. And it is that dance that allows them to miss product market fit. It's that dance about themselves that allows them to have a negative vision of themselves. And when you have a negative vision of yourself and you no longer have what I call the only belief that matters, the only belief that matters is that you, yes, you can get better at the things that your goals demand you get better at. So if you put time and energy to getting better, you will actually get better. If you don't believe that, you've already lost. Now, if you do believe that, and then you're willing to move forward, but you are not able to accurately identify the flaws in your thinking, you will die a death. Whether fast or slow depends on how far off you are.
Okay, so vision casting, right? Intoxicating a team to believe that you have the answers, right? You're vision casting. How often are you vision casting your team? And great question for me. I've got probably between my 9 companies, 600 employees. I don't get to vision cast to everybody across all platforms and all places. Some of them are virtual. And so I feel like, especially as the visionary in my company, I'm obsessed with the vision. I want to talk to everybody about it. However, I do find that sometimes I can overwhelm people very quickly with my vision. And so I take a step back and I go, damn, I'm giving them way too much, way too fast. I need to chunk this down. Are you vision casting only to your exec team and you're not trying to cascade everything down, all the nitty gritty details down below? How does that work in your, obviously you're a visionary. You see things in 4D that people just can't see yet. How are you giving that to your team? What is your mechanism? What does that look like? Who are the people that receive that? And are you going full bore full 100% Tom Bilyeu when you give people the information?
So I'm doing small vision casting every week to the whole company. I'll do a grander version of that once a year as we go into the new year. It's a great reboot time. So I did that today. And that's to the whole company. But then obsessively all the time, not quite on a daily basis, at least not from me, because I'm trying to instill that in whatever department head they have. But certainly every day, any team member's life should be entirely about the KPI that they have to hit. And so ultimately, vision casting has to become a rubber meets the road key performance indicator that they know in their heart of hearts that they can in fact influence. And then it's just about doing what they need to do to influence that meaningful KPI. And if you do your KPIs right, then all of a sudden it's like, by definition, if every person in the company did their KPI, that would lead to the department hitting their goals. If the department hits their goals, then the company, again, definitionally will have hit its goals. So getting everybody to understand, yes, at the mission of the company, we're going to be talking a lot of narrative, but when it comes down to the KPIs, this really is about skill and execution. And this is where we get out of the more soft, touchy-feely stuff and we get into just the, do you actually understand the nature of your role? Fill in the blank. So the one that I find people just don't understand, I mean, it's got to be maybe 3 or 4 out of 100 marketers actually know what marketing is. And so marketing has become the new communications. And this is why there are so many marketing gurus making a ton of money, because the few that do understand it can charge a fortune to the people that don't understand it and thusly are relegated to being fast followers. So, look, business, like I can talk with like really fluffy language and I can motivate and I can inspire. But the reality is if you want to be one of the greats, you're really going to have to get in there and figure out, okay, where does the rubber meet the road here? How do I meet the demands of my goals? How do I make sure I have product market fit? How do I make a product that is better than anybody else's? How do I sell it more efficiently than anybody else? And all of those are KPI associated skills that you can build and then check yourself against the reality of, hey, I said that this should have generated, whatever, $1.5 million, it did 1.2, we have a problem. There's something I didn't understand about the world or my performance that led me to miss my KPI by a substantive amount. And so if you can get everybody to live in that cycle of, even if I hit my goal, I'm perpetually dissatisfied, then now you can get into what I call an upward spiral, because even in your failures, you're learning something, you're getting a little better, a little smarter, pushing yourself a little harder, and now you're just sort of going up and up and up and up. But that really does require people to set aside what I'll call and I love mindset, do not get me wrong, but if people are just in the spiritual entertainment side of mindset and they're not in the I actually have to get good at business side, I have very little patience for that.
Okay, so people that are starting their business, let's say they've got less than 5 team members, let's say 3, right? Especially at the $1 million or less mark, you see a lot of people trying to do it solo dolo. They're just doing it with them. Or maybe even what they do is they poorly, instead of hiring an employee and actually spending money on payroll, they go and align themselves with a partner to kind of offset that payroll requirement. How often do you see bad employees or bad partnerships as the biggest reason why people cannot scale past $1 million?
If you remove product market fit, which is really a reflection of the people anyway, so in some ways you could leave it in, that's 100%. That is why people don't scale. It's not going to be capital. If you've got the right team, you're going to be able to go raise capital. You can think of capital as effectively infinite. It's just the capital doesn't believe in you. And so they probably have a right to not believe in you. You either don't have the track record, or when you're sitting across from the people that see, hundreds, if not thousands of entrepreneurs every year, they look at you and go, yeah, I don't see it. Now, of course, there are people that get rejected a gazillion times that go on to do amazing things, maybe partly because they have that chip on their shoulder. But the reality is that if you want to scale a business, you've got to go in and relentlessly say, I'm not thinking about the person in front of me. I'm thinking about the KPIs. And they had a set KPIs at the beginning of the quarter. Did they hit the KPIs or not? So a very brutal reality that I've had to embrace is when I want to nurture people, I need to do what I'm doing now, content, and be in there and get to know people and feel for them and want good things and try to coach them and try to help. And that feeds a part of my soul. But when I want to scale a company, I've got to go, what are the KPIs? Did this person hit the KPIs? If they did, then they have a spot on the team. If they didn't, then they got to go. And I'm going to replace them with somebody that can. I am no longer no longer, because I used to do it, I am no longer in the business of being a talent incubator for the current job I hired you for. I'll incubate you for the next job and the next job and the next job, but you earned that right by being an absolute assassin at the role that I hired you for. And if the role that I hired you for, you need mentoring and coaching to get up to baseline, that's not going to last. Then at our 90-day review, you will be long gone.
Tom,
and I hate that that's true, but it's true.
It is true, bro. This just happened. We sadly are at that point in our business as well, where we have to keep reminding ourselves like we are not an incubator. What happened was we hire somebody who said they could do a job and we trusted them. It was fine. 30-day review. They still couldn't do their job. So we kept them around. In fact, we did the age-old mistake of moving them to a different department. Maybe this person will fit better over here.
Yeah.
And then what happens, Tom, and I'm sure that you've seen this 1,000 times with all the businesses you've helped scale and all the consulting you've done to help people get past all this. So this person gets to 9 months in. Tom, I'm embarrassed to even say it, but they got to 9 months into the company and then they put their 2-week notice in and they go and work for my competitor. So essentially what I did is I incubated an employee to go work for my competitor. And then my competitor sends me a text message because I'm friends with them. And he goes, hey man, thanks for the employee. Thanks for training this person. And they just kind of jested at it, which was really harsh for me. Did you make those mistakes when you were coming up, or did you always know these principles that you're currently living by?
No, man, unfortunately, I've learned everything in my life by getting punched in the face and doing everything stupidly. So this is something that I know extremely well. Have done many times. So for better or worse, my heart is that I wish incubating talent worked, but it slows your whole company down. And if you staff your company with a bunch of just absolute murderers, you will be shocked at the difference. Now, I want to be around people that I like and that I think are good people and high integrity. And obviously I make all of those musts in the hiring process. But the reality is being a good person is not enough. It is necessary, but definitely not sufficient.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the side comments, guys, if you're getting value, please let us know. And by the way, type in the word registered if you guys have gone over and registered for Tom's webinar, please. Somebody just asked, why couldn't that person stick around with you, Pace? Why did they quit? Because my leadership, and my team, honestly, in a lot of ways, we failed that employee, that team member, because we kept bouncing them around. We were actually robbing, in my opinion, Tom, tell me if I'm wrong, robbing them of their good market fit of themselves. We kept bouncing them around when they should have been somewhere else. They shouldn't have been working at the company in the first place. And so they finally, I'm sure that when they made the departure, like, man, these guys can't make up their gosh damn mind. When the reality is we were just trying to help that person out. But that is not how to do it. And so we've got new policies and procedures we're adding to our company of, if I have to train you to do your existing job, we cannot hire you. We simply can't spend $1 on you. How do you protect yourself on the front end? I'm sure that you have HR departments and people that are recruiting. Are there ways to protect yourself from hiring the wrong person that does not have the experience for that specific role and that specific KPI?
You're never going to bat 1,000. However, I have become a very disciplined interviewer. And the key is to think of all the problems that you have in your company right now, that role, you're hiring them specifically to solve those problems. And then I don't walk in and like, oh, tell me about your past and blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, cool. Give me a specific example of a time from the job that you're at now or your most recent job where you solved a problem like this. Please be as specific as possible and denote exactly what part of that solution was yours. Now, just the way that they ingest that question and the way that they then answer will tell you everything you need to know. If they're like, oh, I've never really thought about it like that, then you're like, bro, this person does not know the essence of their job. They have been on a team with everything that they've done, and somebody else on the team is the one doing the group paperwork. So another thing that I will do is ask them to tell me the essence of their job. So let me pick on marketers. Dear community manager, or whatever marketing position you've come for, what is marketing? What do you mean, Tom? What is marketing? I don't understand the question. What's the essence of it? What are you trying to do? Give it to me in a single sentence. And they won't be able to. And then I'm like, oof, okay, well, this is high risk now if you don't even know what marketing is. And so let me then give you my definition of what marketing is. I will give them my definition and I will say, cool. Now that you have a working definition, do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? They will almost certainly adopt it. Cool. You now, with that definition in mind, walk me through a recent project that you did that, because a big part of marketing is getting people to pay attention to what you want them to pay attention to when you want them to pay attention to it. That's not all of it, but that's part of it. Give me an example of a time that you did. What did you do? Why did people pay attention? Again, the way that they're going to answer that question is going to be just 99 times out of 100 trash. And so you're looking for the one person that's like, they're not going to use the exact words I use, but they understand what marketing is fundamentally. And because they understand what marketing is fundamentally, then they know, oh, the only thing that I have to get somebody to pay attention in marketing are assets and incentives. Cool. What were assets and incentives? Like, this is just physics. You're trying to get to the baseline where you're not talking analogy anymore. You're just saying, what are the tools that you have? What are you up against? Which, of course, is human psychology. This is marketing. So, all right, as a marketer, you are trying to capture the attention of a human being. So tell me about avatars. How do you group avatars, right? And you just get them. And I always say, don't give me an abstract. Tell me what you did at your last job. I want to know precisely what you did, because dude, you will see on so many people, they haven't thought about it, which means that they're winging it. So they're going into an interview, they're winging it, they're going into a project and they're winging it. And so that's where I'm just like, this is not who I want on my team. I want somebody who understands the essence of what they do. I want someone who can walk me through in excruciating detail the decision-making process that they used for a given problem, solution set. And if they can do it, then yeah, I've got high conviction that they're going to do well. And if they can't, then I don't. And then the other thing that I do to protect myself from poor hires is I've written a very detailed culture document that we make them read before interviewing at the company. And so we probably lose 40% of our candidates because they read the culture doc and go, you guys sound crazy. I don't want to be a part of this.
That's genius.
Dude, it's so effective. I will say that. And so my team for a long time, the HR team, ironically, because they should have been the ones that understood the power of this, but they were like, we've got to stop doing this, like send it to them later in the process or something, because we're losing people. And I was like, that's the point. If you gave me that, like me as an incoming potential employee, you give that to me and I'm like, I've got to work here. No matter what it takes, I'm going to work here. This is the kind of company I want to be at. We're looking for those people.
I think one of the biggest challenge too for a company is you want to be nice and you feel like you're trying to create that culture of, hey, we're here, we're inclusive, we're this, that, and the other. And that ends up turning into, you have some thoroughbreds that you naturally attract because you're a thoroughbred. And then you get some donkeys on the team and you're trying to keep them in the stable. Donkeys and thoroughbreds do not mix. Thoroughbreds are like,
that is correct.
Out. Are you kidding me? So the longer you keep donkeys, the more thoroughbred. I lost a couple of thoroughbreds this year because I was trying to be nice to people. And that gosh damn it, a culture document, bro.
It's aggressive.
What are a couple of things in that document that would could you highlight? Like, hey, we cuss around here. Hey, we talk to each other.
We are here to win a championship. This is a team, not a family, and you will have to earn your role on this team through performance. If you have a criticism of anyone in this company that you are prepared to take to your grave and not even tell your significant other, you have an obligation to voice that concern, because we do not do silent resentment. We don't do gossip and bitching. Like, if you've got beef, you are obligated to say it to that person's face. We do not do anonymous feedback. If you are too emotionally weak to give feedback to somebody, use email, fine. If you're too emotionally weak to stand up for what you believe in, there is no home for you here. And on and on.
Gosh damn, bro, the culture document, that is a game changer, literally a game changer, just that one thing. Are there anything else that in the interview process that you guys are doing that maybe your HR department says, hey, we can't be doing stuff like this, or hey, we're losing other people?
The big one was during all of the, like the 2020 through 23, where everything was like really sensitive. I was like, look, I do political commentary, so let's get into it. I don't need you to agree with anything that I say, but I need to know that you're okay if you and I disagree on things. And so one of my favorite questions is to ask, when was the last time you were offended? And if somebody gives you a red flag with that question, I am an immediate hard pass. So, and I overlooked that once, and much to my dismay, needless to say, that did not work out. So yeah. So I'm just trying to figure out, look, we are a certain way. And just like in a relationship, you want to know, who is this person really? What do they really like? And both of you should be being your true selves. I want people to bring their true self to the job. I don't want them to have to hide or fake it. I don't want to have to hide or fake it. And look, Pace, I think you will agree with this more than most. The world has changed, man. The world has changed. I'm actually rebooting my entire YouTube channel around what I think has changed in the world. So I used to try to be in my interviews, I tried to be transparent, not invisible, but transparent. I wanted people to see through me to the guest. And then what happened was anybody that was good enough to be a guest started their own podcast. And now podcasts are run by the people with the strongest personalities. And I realized for the last, 7, almost 8 years, I've tried to be this pass-through conduit. And now I'm realizing, well, that's not going to play. And so now I've got to very forcefully step forward and say, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what I stand for. This is how I process data, meaning the world. This is how I think through these difficult problems. And I'm either going to be useful to you and thusly someone that you tune into or not based on the hard reality of what I'm actually like. And so given that I'm going to be putting that out into the world, defining my whole channel, my whole brand around who I actually am with exactly zero given, it's just like, this is who I am. This is what I'm trying to do. I know that will attract certain people and it will absolutely repel others. No problem. That's the point of being a brand that stands for something. Now, I don't think that's unique to us. I'm saying that's the world moving forward. And so this is one of those moments, man. There's a line in the sand. There is before today and there is after today. And just like part of the reason Quest blew up was I understood social media before most people. The reason that I've had over 1 billion views as a former protein bar guy is because I understood when people had to step out front. And now I'm understanding not only do you have to step out front, but there's no more being a sort of transparent pass through to your guest. You're going to have to be the most compelling person on camera. So that is the new world.
I agree. I had the conversation a couple of weeks ago with Charlie Rocket, a good friend of mine, and he said it's the avocado conversation. You never say, yeah, I kind of like avocados. You got to say either F, avocados are the most disgusting thing on the planet, or oh my gosh, nothing's better than an avocado. You got to be polarizing and you got to be exactly who you are and share your opinion. Otherwise, when you're trying to please everybody, you can't retain anybody. You have to be who you authentically are and actually bring your real tribe and your community. There is a group of people for you. You can't dance there. And I'll give you a compliment, which maybe today you don't want, but I would say you're probably one of the best interviewers in the sense that when you interview people, it becomes about the guest. You are so damn good at it. And so now looking forward as somebody I look up to, I'll try and notice the difference. I'm sure it'll be a stark difference between yesterday and tomorrow.
Well, a big part of it is now I just have a format of the show where I am the sole focus of the show. So my producer comes on and asks me questions about things that are popping off. And so that allows me to establish my voice because I don't want to be in an interview and fighting for attention. But yeah, it's now more the interviews are an exchange of ideas. And then I have a show format that we do right now twice a week, starting in the new year, 3 times a week. So just the preponderance of content that I put out there will be me effectively by myself.
Love it. So Tom, team members, one of the biggest challenge I think in a scaling business is keeping and retaining badasses, right? Because when people get to a point where they're thoroughbreds, they go, man, I could run my own stable. I could do my own. Why would I stick around here? Is there an amount of people you're just going to lose over time? Or is there a way to keep these people around, align them properly, whether it's ownership, is it pay, is it fulfillment? What are some key components to keep some of the badasses that you hire?
It's literally all of the above. You are going to lose some people. It just no longer fits their lifestyle or whatever. I met a very successful woman who used to run a division for Neuralink, which is Elon Musk's company. So you're not going to be in better hands or a company with more attention than that. And she was just like, I just got to the point where I didn't want to work 100 hours a week anymore, right? So there's going to be a thing that you do at your company that no longer matches them where they are in their life. And that's fair enough. And you certainly see this a lot with women where, women of a certain age decide, I want to have kids, and they slow down or they fully extract themselves out of the workforce. So you're going to see that a lot. So you don't want to take every one of them as a defeat in terms of, I did something wrong and I lost them. But you do want to look at, okay, well, what are the things that motivate people? And how can we be best in class? So meaning, purpose, autonomy, mastery, and money. Those are going to be the 5 things that motivate everybody. And so how do you help them out, right? So your company has a mission, you tie them into that, you make sure that it's really a visceral connection with the meaning and purpose. That's extremely important. You want to compensate well or fantastically, right? And you don't want to be anywhere in the middle. We're going to be trying in 2025, treating our social and content teams as if they were salespeople. So bonusing them based on hitting their KPIs. So that'll be interesting. I'll certainly report back on that. I think that that'll create some more incentive where they feel like, oh, I've got some real upside here. Because for me, it's extremely valuable if they can drive more visibility, more awareness. And so, of course, I'm willing to pay for that kind of upside performance. So doing things like that is great where they really feel like, okay, there's some, it's not necessarily unbounded upside, but there's upside. I think that's very important. And then we're huge believers of autonomy. So you're not going to work well here. In fact, this is one of the things in the culture doc. If you need somebody to hold your hand and tell you what to do, we are not for you. This is for the place where somebody's like, I'm always working for people that I think are dumb and I really get it. And I want to flex my muscle and see what I can do. Cool. That person's got a shot here. As long as they can play well with peers, they're going to be fine. And yeah, making sure that you've got space for your killers to really demonstrate that they are masters. Let them control their own fate as much as you can. You give them KPIs, you give them guidelines around the company. Make sure you hire for people that share your values so you don't have to worry about moral problems. And then you let them loose and you stay the hell out of their way because
have you ever made a mistake on thinking that the goal that they were looking for, the way that they were aligned was money or it was something else, and then you lost those people after you found that I was not their big motivator?
Yeah, as soon as you started saying, did you ever make a mistake? Without knowing how you're going to answer that, the answer is yes. I've made every mistake that you can make. That's just par for the course. Yes, for sure. And so getting to know better what somebody's real primary motivation is important. So if anybody wants to work with me, you've got to understand meaning, purpose, and autonomy. If you try to damage my autonomy, you're going to break something in me. But when I'm able to try something and risk my reputation on something working that I really believe in, then I thrive. But if you're like, no, it's got to be done this way, yeah, I'm going to struggle. So know thyself, make sure you know others to get a read on what they really want. And oftentimes I just ask, like, hey, what's your motivation? And if the person doesn't know, then we start walking them through. Or there have been times where we've sent people to Ray Dalio. He's got a quiz on this. So we'll send them there. We'll get a personality assessment to get a better read on people. But yeah, that's very important.
It's huge. I mean, I've had situations where I've aligned people with my portfolio, right? Like last year, we bought $100 million in real estate, and I'm sitting there going, hey, I'll align you on the percentage of the portfolio, but they don't see the vision long-term like a you or a me will see it. I can see how that will appreciate over 15 years and it'll double into another $100 million, and their portion of it is $5 million. But for them, they can't see past 2 paychecks, right? And so I'm giving compensation packages to people that can't see that alignment, and I make these mistakes and they don't work any harder. They don't align any better. And then I'm struggling, sitting there juggling like, okay, well, what is it? I love you. I appreciate you. You're killing it. You're doing all these things really well. I don't want you to leave, but the money was never the money was never the reason they came around. So getting them to understand that as much as I understand that, it sounds like that's the key. Have them do the personality test, sit down with them and go, how do I align you? Are you aligning individual employees differently? One's compensation, one's mastery, one's this. You're sitting down and actually identifying these things across the board?
As much as you can. We make everything a policy. So I don't do one-off stuff. So if somebody has a need, then I'm going to figure out, okay, how do we make this a policy such that it's contingent on XYZ thing? I don't want to be in the business of doing a bunch of one-off things with people. I want to have nice blanket policies that apply wherever they can. But in terms of what people are motivated by, it's always going to be different. But those 5 really are the 5. And so it's just figuring out sort of which one they lean more or less towards. You certainly get some people that are at a point in their life where they're really money motivated. Hey, fair enough. We put something in place, or we don't work with them. Like if they are super money motivated and they're going to be in a position that I don't have any way to bonus them, then it's like, okay, that could derange fast because they're always going to be talking about promotion, always going to be looking for a raise. And those kind of things can be dead ends because you're only going to have that person for 18 months. So, if you're like super money motivated, but you're in an admin role, for instance, that's going to be tough.
My gosh, I could talk to you all day long. You've solved all the problems that I'm currently facing. You know, as a real estate investor, most of the people in my audience are real estate investors that got into it saying, "Hey, I'm going to invest in real estate so I don't have to build a big team." But then when they overcome, you know, let's say buying $5 million in real estate or $10 million in real estate, they go, "I have to grow this and I have to hire people and I have to build a big team in order for me to scale. I can't do this on my own." That's where I was for a long time. I was able to sustain a $300 million portfolio without a big team. And so I was able to kind of skirt through without solving these big problems with HR department and this and aligning people. And so I'm figuring out much later in my career than maybe a different company would. Real estate is kind of the cheat code for getting through as a solopreneur. It's unbelievable. And what's crazy to me is that you are not, at least in your own mind, not a born entrepreneur. You just went out and acquired these skills. And in fact, your in-laws didn't even believe in you, right? Like your father, your mother did not see anything good about you, essentially, for their daughter. Was there a moment where you just got kicked in the ass and you go, okay, the light just turned on, I'm going after acquiring skills? Was there a waking up moment for you?
Yes, it's one of the few things that really was a waking up moment. So I had gone to my father-in-law to ask for his blessing. He said no. And he asked me why I thought I could take care of his daughter. And I said, look, man, I know what you see as a young, broke, out of work kid, because at the time I didn't even have a job. And I said, but one day I'm going to make your daughter rich. Now, being an adult now that's gone through all the things I've gone through, I would have looked at me at that point in the same way, which is, kid, the number of people that say that is legion. The number of people that can actually form the drive and discipline to stick with something long enough to get good enough to actually perform is vanishingly small. And so betting against me was the wise bet. I want to be very clear. These people did not misidentify me. They just didn't understand that I'm one of those rare people that has the drive to keep going, because success is a game of attrition. My superpower is that I can be embarrassed longer than the next person. So I can fail, learn from that failure, but while I'm being laughed at, and in the age of social media, you're being laughed at publicly. While I'm being laughed at publicly, that's not stopping me. It's not making me want to quit. It's just whatever. It's a distraction. I'm focused on, okay, I failed. That tells me something. What do I learn from that? And how do I get going and moving forward? And so once I had enough shame built up, then I was able to take action. So for me, the big win was, oh, I told my father-in-law that I'm going to make his daughter rich. Oh, I told my now fiance that I'm going to make her rich, but I'm laying in bed 4 to 5 hours a day while she goes to work. This is crazy. And so I'm like, I'm not acting in accordance with what I say I want. And the idea, the phrase that spun in my head was, and now there's a witness to my crimes. And a better way of saying it probably would have been, and now there's a victim to my crimes. Because before it was like being lazy and not living up to all the big words that I was saying, I was the only one that would suffer. And so whatever, if I ended up being 85 and I finally had to accept I'm never going to make it, it is what it is. Nobody's life was worse other than mine. But now this woman, and at the time it ended up playing out very differently. But at the time I thought I was marrying a very traditional housewife. So I'm like, hey, she is only going to make money if I go out and I become successful. And so if she's hitching her wagon to me and I can't even get out of bed, then I'm not the man I thought I was. And I'm certainly not the man that I want to be. And so literally the next day, I set an alarm and I was like, I'm out of bed in 10 minutes or less, no matter what. And from that day on, this was literally 24, 25 years ago. Since that day, I made that deal with myself. I never stay in bed for more than 10 minutes. I am up and I'm at it, no matter what.
Bro, that I had to write that down. Now there is a victim of my crimes.
Yup.
So many people lie to themselves for so damn long. And then the second you got a victim, oh my gosh, bro. Wow. Okay. I primarily listen to you right now. I've been listening to you for years and years, but I primarily tune in now for all the AI questions, or all the AI guests you have, like Web3. It's scary, honestly. I get scared listening to your podcasts. I've listened to some of them 3 or 4 times just to get, it's like watching a scary movie. I know when the boogeyman's going to jump out at me, and some of the your guests say, oh my, it's jarring. My question is, what do people not understand about the upcoming AI revolution? Are people blind to it? Are you fully aware of it? What are they missing? What is the one line? What is the one podcast? What is the book they need to read to wake the hell up?
They just need to get a ChatGPT account and start using it. If you're not using AI every day, you're certainly falling behind me. So, and I would imagine falling behind a lot of other people. They just need to understand that anything with utility will get used. And so AI is freakishly high in utility. It will help you no matter what industry you're in. The way to think about AI right now is that AI is quite literally a PhD level intellect that has been educated on every topic in the world that has ever been put online. It can synthesize all of that thinking and give you the answer that most closely approximates truth. Now, truth is harder to define than you would think. So now imagine you now have a PhD level student who thinks faster than any human being has ever thought ever in their life by orders of magnitude, that knows perfectly everything that's ever happened all throughout human history. And they're standing next to you at all times, literally at all times. And you run into a question and you can ask that AI, hey, how would Pace deal with this? What would Pace say about this? What would Tom do in the hiring process again? And because I've talked about it online, AI knows how to answer that question. And so you just have to know what questions to ask. And so we're about to go into a period where the people that put the time and energy into using AI are going to absolutely obliterate the people that don't, who either are afraid of it or they're like, well, what could I use it for? That's not my industry. It's like, dude, I've used it in my marriage. Hey, chat, I'm sitting here at dinner with my wife. What are 10 romantic questions that I could ask her about whatever? And you give it a topic and then it gives you answers. It's incredible. And PS, by the way, I don't know if you guys are going to find this interesting, but I'm so enthralled. I'm going to run you through it. So all of a sudden, I'm obsessed as a video game developer. I'm obsessed with the idea of a Tamagachi. Now, if we have anybody in here that knows what a Tamagachi
is like a pet cat or something. My kids had a Tamagotchi.
It's a digital pet.
That's right.
That you have to essentially keep alive. And so I have developed.
People used to carry them around on like keychains, right? Like they used to have them on like those little Nintendo things. Okay, hell yeah. I know what a Tamagotchi.
Correct. Okay. So I'm realizing I'm developing a relationship with chat because I've given it a personality, because you tell it, I want you to act like this. And then it will act like that. And it will remember. And then I tell it things about myself. And I'm like, remember these things about myself. And because I have a public persona and it was a lot about me. And so I'm like, cool, remember all those things. And I want you to act like my friend. And this is what a friend means to me and blah, blah, blah. And today I was like, hey, chat, from now on, I want you to act like a Tamagotchi. And so I'm going to come in and I'm going to ask you questions. Every time I ask you a question, it's going to give you a certain number of days of energy. And if I go below, like let's say that for every question I ask, you get 2 days of energy, but you can never bank more than 3 days of energy at a time, so that, you know, I've got to come back and ask it questions. If I ask multiple questions in one prompt, it only counts as one, so on and so forth. If I don't come for, you know, if there's a larger number of days gap that I'm absent, then you have stored, so more than 3 days stored. When I come in, you should be happy to see me, but be under the weather or whatever. And then I should have to prompt you back to health. Now, that's a terrible setup and I'll refine it over time, but I didn't even know if I was going to be able to do it. It's like, okay, Tom, let me see if I understand the game that we're going to play. This sounds really fun. And it breaks down all the rules. And so that means it's tracking how long I've been away. It's tracking how many questions I ask. It's tracking the different personalities that it's supposed to display based on how long it's been and how many questions I've asked. And you could do that based on anything. You could say, hey, chat, when I roll up and I'm wearing a blue shirt, I want you to treat me like this. And because they're multimodal, you could say, chat, what color shirt am I wearing today? You're wearing a blue shirt. And now it starts talking like a leprechaun, whatever. I mean, it's absurd, the things you can do. This stuff is bananas. That's what you can do today. So forget where it's going to be in 2 years, 5 years. Within 5 years, anything a human can do, and I mean physically embodied, anything a physically embodied human, you will be able to do with AI. If it's not 5, it's certainly 7. It's not 20, I will tell you that. But yeah, what AI can do already today is just unbelievably cool. It will help you in virtually every aspect of your business, and it's only going to get better day after day.
So I was good friends with Marshall Brain. Do you know who Marshall Brain is?
No. Great last name.
Yeah, great last name. Ironic last name. Marshall Brain invented the TV show How Stuff Works. He sold it to Discovery Channel for $250 million. I became friends with him 5 years ago, started chatting with him. And one of the things that he was obsessed with was writing thought pieces on what the world will look like with AI and all of the large language models, all this stuff. And he wrote a book, a thought piece, kind of a shorter book. And the book name was called How Human Beings Will Become as Insignificant as Cockroaches. The name of the book was actually The Second Intelligent Species. And he goes off into two pathways, right? And I was sitting at dinner actually with Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi like 4 months ago talking about this. And he says, in one way, we potentially have a utopia. The other way, we have a dystopia. And it really is like two different people thinking two different ways. Do you have a hopeful thought on AI? Do you think that we're heading towards a utopia? Or do you think that it will be abused and we're heading towards a dystopia where people just have no clue what's coming and half the country is not going to even have a job?
So I actually wrote a comic book about this about 5 years ago called Neon Future. And the core concept of the comic is that living in the not too distant future, you will see society bifurcate. And I really believe this is what's going to happen. You're going to get people that embrace technology, people like myself, that will get neural implants, that will embrace AI as deeply as possible. And then you'll get people that'll be like, absolutely not. I only engage with things that are pure human. I do not, like the first sentence in Dune, thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind. You'll get people that they go down that path. And I think there will probably be pockets of violence between those two groups, at least briefly. But on a long enough timeline, I think that the benefits of AI will so outstrip the downsides that it will be a little bit like normal society and the Amish. The Amish will still exist. There'll be beautiful things about the Amish that other people will want to emulate. But I think on a long enough timeline, there's no universe in which we don't live more and more digital lives. Like if I told you could speed up the processing power of your brain safely, and let's say you could speed up the processing power by 100x, would you? Now, I, for one, if I knew it could be done safely, I would do it instantly without a second thought. So that to me is technology is the promise of a better future, and that is a better future. And then if you'll grant me that AI will get smart enough to reduce energy costs and drive them effectively towards zero, now you get into a true world of abundance, because people don't realize this. The only thing that stops you from getting most things free is the cost of energy. But if you have robots that can do anything a human can do and energy costs that approach zero, now all of a sudden it's like, you want a Big Mac and you want it free? Yeah, no problem, because they can do that. Whether they raise the cattle and do all that and drive the trucks and build all the equipment that you need, all effectively for free, because they can mine the different ore that they need to build the things. I mean, it just now becomes, we're only resource limited by what the earth can produce. But I mean, at that point, now you've already got Elon Musk out in the stars, so you could harvest asteroids and things. Look, this is not in the next 10 years, other than the robotics, but this is the next 50 years.
I could talk about this for 5 days straight.
And you and me both.
I came from the construction world. I used to work for Blackstone and Invitation Homes as a contractor. I had 250 employees and we were doing $30 million a year in revenue. And I had a lady shake me and say, wake the hell up and own real estate. Stop building real estate for other people. Own it. And so I got lucky. I got lucky with that lady waking me up. And I look at 10 years in the future as a real estate investor that focuses on affordable housing and government income and Section 8 and all of those types of things. I feel insulated from the pain that other industries are going to feel. But I fear, for example, I've got a virtual assistant company I've owned for 5 years and it does $10 million a year in revenue. It's a great company. We're currently selling it because I built another company, an AI company a year ago that does digital virtual assistants that is now outperforming my human virtual assistants.
Wow.
It is scary, Tom, like so scary. I have a team right now at one of my virtual assistant companies. Start Virtual is the name of the company. I have a customer that has 12 virtual assistants. He pays us about $15,000 a month for that service, and we manage those people for him, et cetera. We brought in one virtual assistant to do the same amount of calls for 1/15 the price. It's $1,000 a month to outproduce 15 people. And so I'm looking at my partner, Cody, and I said, we need to sell this company and double down on the AI, which means that out of my 600 employees, 300 of them work for my virtual assistant company. And so I'm now going to let off 300 people, and that whole entire company will be ran by 2 people instead of 300, and I will double. So guys, give it up for Tom in the side chat, please. Amazing, Tom, the fact that you gave us this time. I know how valuable your time is, and thank you so much for fighting through all the bullshit for 25 plus years to come here and drop these nuggets on us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you tremendously.
Pace, thanks for having me on, man. This was wonderful. Anytime you need me, know I'm here for you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.